You hear a word for the first time, a strange specific word. Someone says it at dinner. You nod like you understand. 10 minutes later, you open a book, and there it is again. The same word. Then a stranger says it on the bus. Then it shows up in an ad. Your brain freezes for a second. Is the universe trying to tell you something? It isn't. But the real answer is far stranger than a message from the universe. Your brain has been doing this to you your entire life, and you never noticed because the moment it starts, it hides its own tracks. This feeling has a name. It is called the Baader Meinhof phenomenon, and its origin story is almost as strange as the effect itself. In 1994, a man posted on an online forum. He mentioned the Baader Meinhof gang, a West German militant group from the 1970s. He said he'd heard the name once, out of nowhere, and then heard it again within a day, from someone completely unconnected to the first mention. Other people on the forum replied with the same story. Different names, different topics, same exact pattern. A word appears once. Then it appears everywhere. Coincidence, right? Stanford linguist Arnold Zwicky heard about this forum thread years later, and he gave the feeling a more clinical name, the frequency illusion. Not because the word is actually more frequent, because your brain has quietly changed how it filters the world around you. Here is the part that should unsettle you a little. Your brain receives an almost impossible amount of information every single second. Sounds, colors, movement, faces, words on signs, conversations in the next room. If you consciously processed all of it, you would be paralyzed. So your brain deletes almost everything before it ever reaches your awareness. It has to. There is no other way to function. What decides what gets through? Relevance. Not truth. Not importance to the world. Just relevance to you, right now. This is where the second piece of the puzzle comes in. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky spent years studying how people judge what is common or likely. They found something counterintuitive. People don't judge frequency by counting instances. They judge it by how easily examples come to mind. This is called the availability heuristic, and it is the engine underneath the frequency illusion. Once a concept becomes available in your mind, your brain starts treating every new sighting of it as proof that it is suddenly everywhere. It was always there. You just weren't primed to notice it. Think about what priming actually means for a moment. When you learn a new word, your brain doesn't file it away in some dusty archive. It builds a tiny search filter, a tag, and that tag stays active, quietly scanning your environment for matches. Long after you've stopped consciously thinking about the word at all. You've felt this before, even if you never named it. You buy a car. Suddenly that exact model is on every street. You learn you are pregnant. Suddenly strollers are everywhere. You discover a rare medical term. Suddenly it is mentioned twice in 1 week. Nothing about the world changed. Your filter changed. There is a deeper reason your brain works this way, and it goes back further than online forums or car commercials. For most of human history, survival depended on catching subtle patterns fast. A rustle in the grass that matched yesterday's danger. A face that resembled someone from a hostile group. A smell that once preceded sickness. Your ancestors who noticed repeating signals lived longer than the ones who dismissed them as coincidence. Noticing patterns, even imperfect ones, was cheaper than ignoring a real threat. So your brain evolved to lean toward false positives. Better to notice 10 coincidences that mean nothing than to miss the one that means everything. That bias didn't disappear when danger became rarer. It just moved on to new targets. Words, brands, diseases you just read about on your phone at 1 a.m. Here's where it gets stranger. Your brain isn't just tuned to notice more once something becomes relevant. It is also actively blind to things that aren't relevant yet, no matter how obvious they are. In 1999, researchers Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons ran an experiment that has become famous for a reason. They asked people to watch a video of students passing a basketball and count the passes. Halfway through, a person in a full gorilla costume walked directly through the middle of the scene, thumped its chest, and walked off. About half the viewers never saw it, not because the gorilla was hidden, because their attention was locked onto something else, and their brain simply deleted what didn't match the task. That is inattentional blindness, and it is the twin sibling of the frequency illusion. One shows you how much your brain edits out. The other shows you what happens the moment something finally gets past the editor. So which is it? Are you seeing more of the word, or were you always missing it before? The honest answer is both. The information was always there, at roughly the same rate it always was. What changed is which parts of it your brain now considers worth keeping. This has consequences far beyond noticing a strange word twice in one day. Once you understand the frequency illusion, you start to see it shaping bigger things. Someone convinced a certain political danger is rising everywhere they look. Someone convinced a certain illness must be spreading because they keep hearing about it. Someone convinced their ex is doing suspiciously well because their name keeps coming up. In every case, the brain isn't lying about what it noticed. It is lying about what that noticing proves. Advertisers understand this better than almost anyone. That is why repeated exposure works so well, even when you consciously ignore an ad. The first exposure plants the tag. Every exposure after that doesn't just repeat the message. It confirms it, because your brain now treats each sighting as independent evidence that the product is suddenly relevant to your life. You are not being tricked by one clever ad. You are being tricked by your own search filter, running quietly in the background, doing exactly what it evolved to do. Is there a way to catch it happening in real time? Not easily. That is the unsettling part. The frequency illusion doesn't announce itself. It feels like discovery. It feels like the world lining up to hand you a pattern, not like your own mind narrowing its aperture. The only real defense is a strange kind of humility. When something suddenly seems to be everywhere, the question worth asking isn't, why is this happening so much? It is what changed in me, not the world, right before I started noticing. Consider how this plays out in a hospital, of all places. Medical students learn a rare disease in their second year. Within days, they start suspecting it in patients who almost certainly don't have it. Doctors even have a nickname for this: medical student syndrome. It is not a joke about hypochondria. It is the frequency illusion, wearing a lab coat. The disease didn't become more common. The search filter for it simply switched on. And every ordinary symptom now gets measured against a pattern that wasn't available to notice a week earlier. Or consider grief, which behaves the same way in a much quieter register. Someone loses a parent, and suddenly every film seems to be about loss. Every song on the radio mentions fathers or mothers. Every stranger's conversation drifts, somehow, toward death. It isn't that culture rearranged itself around one person's pain. It is that pain built a tag, and the tag went looking for confirmation, the same way it does for a word or a gorilla suit. The mind, in its own way, is always doing this. Sorting, filtering, deciding milliseconds before you are aware of it. What counts as signal and what gets thrown away as noise? Here is a question worth sitting with. If your brain is constantly editing reality down to what feels relevant, how much of what you call a pattern is actually out there, and how much of it was assembled after the fact, backward, from a single spark of attention? Neuroscientists have a term for parts of this machinery: the reticular activating system. A bundle of neurons at the base of the brain stem filters incoming sensory signals before they ever reach conscious thought. It is the same system that lets a sleeping parent ignore traffic outside, but jolt awake at a baby's faint cry 3 rooms away. Relevance, once established, cuts straight through everything else. It doesn't ask permission first. That is what makes the frequency illusion so convincing. It isn't a hallucination. Nothing about it is imagined. The word really was said again. The car really did drive past. The gorilla really did walk across the screen. The illusion isn't in the event. It is in the story your brain tells about why the event happened now, of all times. Right after you first noticed it, coincidence gets quietly reclassified as confirmation, and confirmation feels a lot more satisfying than randomness ever does. Why would a brain prefer a comforting story over an accurate one? Because for most of the time humans have existed, an accurate story about randomness didn't keep anyone alive. A story about pattern did. If a plant made 3 people sick in a row, your ancestors didn't need a controlled study to stop eating it. They needed a fast, cheap rule. Notice it twice. Treat it as certain. That rule saved lives for tens of thousands of years. Long before anyone had the luxury of testing it scientifically. You inherited that same rule. It just runs on stranger inputs now. Vocabulary advertising, group chats. Try, for a moment, to picture the sheer volume of coincidence your brain throws away every single day without a second thought. A stranger wearing the same jacket as your brother, a song that happens to be playing when you think of an old friend, a number on a license plate that matches your birthday. All of it passes by, unremarked, because none of it has been tagged as relevant yet. You don't experience these as eerie, because your filter never flagged them. Only the ones that match something already loaded into your attention get to feel like fate. The rest simply vanish, the way the gorilla vanished for half the people watching that basketball video, invisible not because it wasn't there, but because nothing in their mind was searching for it. This is, in a strange way, a hopeful realization as much as an unsettling one. It means the world isn't secretly rearranging itself around you, for better or worse. It means you have more influence over what you notice than it feels like in the moment. Learn a new skill, and suddenly opportunities to use it appear everywhere. Decide to be more grateful, and suddenly reasons for gratitude surface in ordinary places they were always hiding in plain sight. The tag doesn't care whether the input is a stray vocabulary word or a chosen way of seeing the world. It will hunt for whatever you feed it, with the same tireless ancient efficiency your ancestors once used to spot danger in the grass. Which brings you back to that word at dinner, the one that followed you onto the bus, into a book, across an advertisement. Nothing lined up to send you a message, your ancestors' oldest survival trick. The one built to catch a predator in the grass, quietly repurposed itself for a syllable you happened to hear once. The universe wasn't paying attention to you. You were just finally paying attention to it.